So as always, please stop me if there's something that's not clear or you don't understand or I'm talking too fast. Please mute yourself for now, just so it's easier for everyone else to hear. And then obviously unmute if you have any questions. We're not in school, so you don't need to put your hand up. You can just button and ask. So we are going through our series of the women through Tanakh and women through the ages, really. The last woman we spoke about was Rachel, but we're not going chronologically at the moment, only because obviously with Purim coming up, it would make more sense to learn about Esther. Esther, who is the heroine of the Purim story. She is somebody who symbolizes the metamorphosis, I should say, of the Jewish people that went from one kind of nation to another kind of nation. She is symbolic of that in herself, that she was one kind of a person and she became somebody else, which we're going to see throughout the story. And Esther is somebody who we all grew up knowing lots about because we all learned about the Purim story in school and in Cheder, and we all dressed up as her and we all acted her out. So we all feel like we know who Esther is, but really there's a lot to Esther that we don't know. And when I was preparing the shir, there were so many things that I learned about her now that I completely overlooked in previous years. So it was very interesting for me to be able to research a bit into her. And so hopefully you'll find something that you don't know or didn't know before in the course of this year. So number one is from the Megillah, chapter 2. And it says, Vayhi omen et Hadassah hi Esther. And it talks about this woman who was called Hadassah. She was Esther. So the first time we are introduced to this woman called Esther, the heroine of our story, she's actually been given two names. She's given the name of Hadassah and the name of Esther. So we have questions to ask. First of all, why does she have two names? Why is it relevant to call her Hadassah here when in reality we know she's never called Hadassah really again, as far as I can remember, and she's Esther. So why is the name Hadassah relevant? So let's go and have a look and first of all understand the name the name Esther, and then we'll look at the name Hadassah. So Esther, as most famously known, Esther comes from the word Hester, which means hidden. So just like she had to hide her Judaism while she was in the palace of Ahasuerus, so too her name represents this hidden side of her personality. Also, the word Hester, meaning hidden, represents the fact that God was hidden in the Megillah, and that's representative of her being like the central character in the story. So this whole idea of hidden comes from this word Esther and the word Hester. Then if we look a bit further down in source number 2, we can see that there's another reason that the Gemara explains, the Gemara in Megillah explains why is she called this name Esther. The name Esther comes from the word Ishtahar, it's called in Hebrew, or Aramaic, I should say, Ishtahar, which refers to the celestial beings, basically planets and the stars, and refers to her beauty. And she's given this name Esther because she was a beautiful person, and therefore the name references this beautiful part of her. So that's Esther. There's two reasons why she's called Esther, very, very straightforward. Now let's go on to the name Hadassah. So Hadassah is a name which I'm sure many of us have heard of before, but I never really understood the significance of the name until really I prepared this shir. So there's a couple of things we're going to look into in a bit of detail. So bear with me and it will all come together in a couple of minutes. So don't worry, it will make sense. So let's have a look at source number 3. Source number 3, it says here, again from the Gemara, it says Esther was her real name. So why then was she called Hadassah? What is this name Hadassah all about? On account of the righteous who are called Hadassim, who are called myrtles. Okay, so one second, a bit strange. What's this all talking about? It says, the Gemara explains that the name Hadassim or Hadassim, which is the Hebrew for myrtles, is something to do with righteousness, something to do with goodness. Okay, so have that in our minds. Now let's go to the next source. Again, this will all come together in a minute. The next source, again from the Gemara, says that basically, as a Jew, we are always a Jew. We can never get rid of our Jewishness, even if we convert to another religion, even if we forget all our Jewish roots and we never keep a mitzvah ever again. Once a Jew, always a Jew. We've always got this pintele yid inside of us, as they say. We've always got this Yiddish soul inside of us. And the Gemara explains it in this funny way. The Gemara says, look at the English over here. Even when So it says here that if Jewish people have sinned, they're still called Israel. Even if people don't want to be part of the Jewish people, they're still Jewish. They're always going to be part of the Jewish nation. So too, and it's very strange, even when a myrtle, even when a hadassah, a hadassim, is found among thorns, its name is still myrtle, and people will always call it a myrtle. So just let's just imagine the scene here. You've got a forest floor full of thorns, and in the middle of the thorn, there is this branch, this myrtle branch. And the Gemara is saying that even though it's surrounded by thorns, a myrtle will always be a myrtle. So what has this got to do with Esther, and what's this got to do with everything? Basically, throughout our history, throughout our Jewish history, and today even to an extent as well, we have hadassim, we have myrtles who are there, who are individuals who are there. So when we are surrounded by bleakness, when we are surrounded by thorns, or we are surrounded by things which are very, very maybe scary and dangerous for us, there are people who are myrtles. There are people who are righteous. And those righteous people remind us that we too are righteous. Remind us that we will always be Jewish, that we should always be proud of our Judaism. Doesn't matter what is going on behind the scenes, doesn't matter who is trying to annihilate us or who's trying to convince us to leave our Judaism behind, we will always be rooted in our Judaism. And these people are called righteous and called myrtles for this particular reason. That is exactly who Esther was. Esther was somebody who convinced the Jewish nation in a time when they were going completely off the rails. Remember, at this time, Achashverosh had invited them to a massive feast. And they went. They enjoyed all the delicacies that weren't necessarily so kosher. They were partying in a way that wasn't so in tune with Jewish values, all of these things. And Esther comes along and she becomes the myrtle. She becomes the person that shows them that they are still Jewish, that they should still be proud of their Jewish heritage and their Jewish roots. And that is why the Gemara says that she is called Hadassah. And that's why she's introduced as this name as Hadassah, just like these myrtles that we have in our Jewish history. And so much so, when we think about myrtles or Hadassim, what do we think about? It reminds us of Sukkot, right? On Sukkot, what do we have? I see some people mouthing Sukkot. What do we have on Sukkot? We have the 4 species, the Arba Minim, right? The Lulav, the Etrog, the Hadassim, and the Aravot. And we're told that each of these 4 species represents a different person within the Jewish nation. So for example, we have the etrog. The etrog tastes lovely and it also smells lovely. And therefore they are representative of people who do loads and loads of good deeds and are also really, really knowledgeable. And they have all the different of the species represent different kinds of people. And what do the hadassim represent? What do the myrtles represent? The myrtles represent people, well, it smells nice, but it doesn't taste very nice. So it represents people who do good deeds, but don't necessarily know so much Torah, aren't so knowledgeable, but they do a lot of good deeds. And this is basically trying to teach us an amazing lesson by the fact that Esther was Hadassah, the fact that Esther was this myrtle, is that it doesn't, obviously we have to always be striving to learn more, and we always should be striving to continue our Jewish knowledge, and that should be an aim for everybody. But not all of us are going to be etrogim. Not all of us are going to be, Talmidei Chachamim. Not all of us are going to be able to sit in yeshiva all day and learn and be the creme de la creme of the Talmudic world. We just all can't be that. And as we know, each of the 4 species makes up the entire Jewish people. The fact that Esther was able to achieve so much, and basically she was the reason, or she was the beginning of the redemption process, really, of the Jewish nation at this juncture. And yet she was only a myrtle. She was only somebody who, she wasn't the creme de la creme of society. She didn't know so much Torah. She didn't know everything, but yet she managed to change the world, literally change the face of the Jewish world by focusing on her strengths, focusing on what she was good at, and by doing all the good deeds that her name has become associated with. I think it gives us a lot of inspiration as to, we all should try and learn whatever we can, but ultimately we need to be conscious of who we are and try and make the best of the things that we can do with our own set of skills. Okay, so that's all about the name. Now, Esther was a descendant of Rachel. We spoke about Rachel a few weeks ago, or last time even, a couple of weeks ago. And we mentioned that that Esther was a descendant of Rachel. And there are quite a few similarities that we can see between Rachel and Esther. First of all, the fact they're both beautiful. And we're told that Rachel and Esther both were beautiful. And that was a very big similarity. Another thing was that they both had to make huge sacrifices. Last time we spoke about Rachel having to sacrifice really her life for her children when she died in childbirth. She was buried on the side of the road. All these things we spoke about last time. And we're going to see soon at the end of the story of Esther that Esther also had sacrifices for the Jewish people. And again, that was another similarity. And last of all is the secrets. Both Esther and Rachel were people who had to keep secrets. Rachel had to keep the secret of the signs from Jacob when she gave them to Leah. She also had to keep the secret from her father. And so too, Esther had to keep these secrets, the fact that she was Jewish, from Achashverosh for basically her entire life, until she managed to tell him with the beginning of the Purim story. So we see there's lots and lots of similarities between her and her great, whatever it is, grandmother. So now let's look and see what we can learn about Esther from the text. So first of all, the first thing we knew is her name. Now let's look over here and see the source number 5. Source number 5 comes from the Megillah itself, and it talks about when Vashti was sent away. The story with the spots and all this, the different mafarshim, different midrashim tells all different things that happened. And basically, they're talking about who's going to replace her. And what does it say? It says, Liruta hatova mimena. We need to find somebody who is tova, who is gooder, it's not really a word, better than she was, better than Vashti was. So what does it mean by better than Vashti was? It means somebody who was more, a better girl. She was somebody who was, more docile, more well-behaved, more compliant, more just a more edel-madel girl than Vashti was. Vashti came up and said, I'm not doing this. And they wanted somebody who was going to be better than her, that wasn't going to contradict what the king wanted. And we see in source number 6, that's exactly who Esther was. That was who Achashverosh managed to find. It says she would not again to the king unless the king wanted her, when she would be summoned by name. Basically, she only did what the king wanted. She was not somebody to go against the king's wishes. She was very, very passive. And we know that she actually hid in Mordechai's house from all the guards that were going around looking for all the Jewish women. And actually all the women, full stop. And we know that she hid because she didn't want to be taken to the palace. She didn't want the spotlight. She didn't want to be she didn't want this royal life, even though they had lovely clothes and nice jewelry. She didn't want it. She wanted to live a good Jewish life in her uncle or father, or whoever, whatever relationship was. We're not going to go into that now, with her and Mordechai. What does it say in source number 7? Vatilakach Esther. Esther was taken. She was physically taken to the palace. It wasn't her choice to go. She was a very, very passive and inactive member of this Purim story right at the beginning. And again, these words always make us think of other things in the Torah. What did we speak about? Right at the beginning, I think the second session we ever had, we spoke about Sarah. We spoke about how Sarah was also taken. She was abducted. She was taken against her will. And we then mentioned back all those months ago that Sarah died when she was 127 years old. And that is symbolic of the 127 provinces that Esther rules over, because again, there's a relationship between Esther and Sarah, between these two biblical characters. So yet, despite the fact that Esther really, really didn't want to go, she was adamant that she didn't want to be a part of this story. And even when Mordechai came and begged her to help because he knew what was going to happen, she still resisted at the beginning, right? She wasn't somebody who said yes immediately. That should just be noted. What happens? She transforms into an initiator. She transforms into somebody who gets up, becomes very, very active, and not just is active, but changes Jewish law. And this we spoke about last night, Tanya and Karen. So I apologize, but it'll be a good refresher for you. But I couldn't leave it out. It was too good. So basically, what do we have in source number? What number is it? The source is above. Source number 8, I think it is. Source number 8 here. Source number 8 talks about how Esther, she suddenly decides, yes, I'm going to be proactive and I'm going to help the Jewish people and I'm going to tell them what to do. So she says, Lech knos et kol hayudim, go gather all the Jewish people and tell them. What did she tell them to do? But sumu elai, fast for me. Va'al tachlu va'al tishtu shashay amim. They should not eat and not drink for 3 days. And then we see in the next verse, it says, V'ya'avor Mordechai, and Mordechai passed over. It's a very strange word, passed over. V'ya'as k'chol asher tzivta alav Esther. And he did everything that Esther commanded. Now, what is going on here? Why does it say, number one, that Mordechai passed over? What did he pass over? He wasn't walking on anything. He wasn't crossing a river. He wasn't doing anything. What was he passing over? He just was telling the Jewish people to listen to her. And then why does it say that he did everything that she told him to do? Why so specific? Just say they did it, or just why do we even need to be told that he listened to her? Wouldn't it be assumed that if she said something as the queen of Persia at the time, that he would listen? Why does it say that specifically? And the answer is this, because let's look down at the next source. The next source hasn't got any English. We're just going to do it quickly here. It says that these 3 days, that Esther said they should fast on. What were they? Elu hen. What were these days? Yud Gimel, Yud Dalid, and Tet Vav B'Nisan. The 13th, the 14th, and the 15th of Nisan, which, as we discussed last night, is the first days of Pesach. So what is going on here? Esther the commandments of Pesach. She's telling them, ignore Pesach, ignore Seder night. Do not have the Pesach Matzah Mara. Don't do any of that stuff. Just listen to me and fast. Now that is revolutionary, that a woman should be able to stand up and change halacha for that particular year. Now we know she only did this because she was a prophet. She wasn't just some random person. She was a prophet who did it with the will of Hashem, on her shoulders. But the fact that she did this is incredible. And then what happens is that she has this discussion. It says here she has a discussion with her uncle Mordechai, who is a Zaken B'Yisrael, a very, very, not an old person, an elder, a knowledgeable person in Israel. And Mordechai says, how can you do this? How can you tell the Jewish people to ignore Pesach? And what does she say back? Lama hu Pesach. What is the point of Pesach if there's no Jewish people? I'm telling you that for this year in particular, you need to tell the Jewish people to fast. That is the most important thing to do right now. And I was discussing last night in the share we had for the people who read the women that lay in the Megillah. We were discussing how really it's very similar to nowadays, to this year and last year, is that the way we're living now is not really the way it's meant to be. We're celebrating festivals the way we're celebrating them. But we're doing it for Pekuach Nefesh. We're doing it to save lives, just like Esther was doing it to save the lives of the Jewish people there as well. And we're doing it for the right reasons, following the right people. We're able to do these things for particular circumstances, and this is an example of one of them. So what happens? What is this V'ya'avor Mordechai? Mordechai passes over. What does it mean? It means 2 things. Number one, that he passed over Pesach. Mordechai was willing to forgo Pesach because Esther told him to, which again is like a crazy thing. If someone told us to ignore Pesach and just to fast instead, we would say, what, are you mad? But Mordechai realized that Esther knew better than he did in this situation. And also it says, V'ya'avor, that he passed over, refers to that he literally changed sides. He was on one side saying, no, don't do it. And then because he listened to her, she was such a good advocate for what she was saying, he passed over onto her side and her opinion. And again, this shows us her courage, the fact that she actually became like a queen. She became somebody who ruled and became somebody who people actually listened to. So this is how we see like the development of Esther, somebody who was very meek and inactive, becoming somebody that stands up and actually transforms halacha for this particular year. Now let's move on. So then we have over here, Esther goes to the king and she says, Im al hamelech tov, if it will be good for the king, please, Mr. King and King Achashverosh and Haman, please come to a big feast with me. Now, what does this verse teach us? This verse teaches us that Esther is very, very strategic in her planning. She understands that what does Achashverosh want? He wants a meek wife. He wants a wife that will listen to everything that she says. And she knows, she's like a good military strategizer here. She understands if she was to come in and say, your friend Haman, he wants to kill me, Achashverosh wouldn't even know what to do with that information. It would just be too overwhelming for him. she knew she had to like play Achashverosh a little bit and remind him that she was still this meek, edel madel girl that he married and that he wanted to control. And that's why she says, if it will be good for you, Achashverosh, then please come to my feast. Again, she's very clever in the way that she is sort of putting into place all the pieces of this jigsaw. Now let's have a look. Let's look now at we're coming to the end, the last source, and we're going to wrap everything up about Esther and about what this teaches us about Purim and how it relates to us in our lives today. Is a festival that is very different to other festivals in the sense that everything is very hidden. The miracles could be seen as coincidences if one wants to be of that opinion. We know God's name is not mentioned once in the Megillah. And we could just say, oh, it just happened to be this way, happened to be that way. But what does Esther teach us? And Esther really symbolizes the transformation of the Jewish people at this point, from being a nation that witnesses public miracles, to a nation that acknowledges private miracles and undercover miracles. Let's have a look at this source number 12. This is the source where Esther gets dressed and she gets ready to go into the palace, onto the chamber of. I'm just going to mute. There you go. Into the inner chambers of Achashverosh, and it says here, "Vayhi b'yom hashlishi," and on the third day. So after all this fasting and after this praying and after beseeching God, what does she do? The Tilbash Esther. So first of all, very, very important. First, she gets everyone to pray. First, they ask God. The first thing you do is you turn to your creator and you say, God, I need your help. That's stage number 1. Stage number 2, Tilbash Esther, she gets dressed. She realizes that she has to actually do something herself. It's no good just sitting around crying to God saying, help me, help me, help me. It's like that story with the lifeboat when there's like a flood, and then, you've heard a story, I'm sure you've heard it before, and there's like a flood and the waters come up, and then there's a helicopter and there's a boat, doesn't get in, God will save me, and then the helicopter comes and eventually he drowns. And ultimately, when he goes to God and God says, why did you drown? He said, well, I was waiting for you to save me. He said, well, who do you think sent you the helicopter? Who do you think sent the boat? It's the same thing here. She realizes here that you have to be active. You have to actually get dressed. You've got to actually take the step yourself. She does this here. She gets dressed, but it's not just about getting dressed. She puts on this royal clothing. Tilbash Esther Malchut, she puts on the royal clothing. But this royal clothing has two meanings, a dual meaning. Number one, it means that she puts on the royal clothing, i.e. the queen of Persia, the wife of Achashverosh. But also, she puts on her royal clothing, as in her Jewish royal clothing, as in the princess of the Jewish nation, as in the daughter of God. And the whole way through this conversation, we're not going to go into it inside now just for time reasons, she has a dual conversation with Achashverosh that makes absolutely total sense with talking to God at the same time. And then she's beseeching Achashverosh, but she also beseeches God simultaneously, right? Which is a very, very difficult thing to do. And what does Esther teach us here in this situation? She teaches us that the Purim story is about combining the spiritual dimension, the spiritual world, the world that we try and emulate, but by bringing it down into the physical world, by getting dressed into our normal clothes, as well as getting dressed into our spiritual clothes at the same time. Esther was somebody who convinced the people, who brought the people basically from a level where they were going to the king's party and hanging out and doing things that they should not have been doing, to a nation who recognized and acknowledged the hidden miracles of God throughout the whole situation. So much so that we are told, and again, I apologize to people last night, but it's just, again, too good to not to mention. But I'm just going to mute I forgot what I was going to say. Yes, so much so that we're told when the Jewish people accepted the Torah at Mount Sinai, we are told that God, or the Midrash says, that the mountain was dangled over their heads. And when the mountain was dangled over their heads, basically, God was saying to them, you cannot accept the Torah, but if you don't, this is going to be your burial place. Basically, if you don't accept the Torah, you're going to die here. Now, that doesn't seem like much free will to me. It doesn't seem like it's going to, I thought we accepted the Torah because we loved God and because we wanted to, not because someone dangled it over our heads and said, if you don't, you're going to be killed. What's this all about? And the commentaries explain that what does this what does this really symbolize? Is that at the Pesach story, when the Jewish people had the 10 plagues and the splitting of the sea and the manna outside their front doors every single day and the clouds of glory above them in the desert and the fire and the well, all these outwardly crazy miracles that happened, it would be absolutely ridiculous for them to say at that point, sorry, I'm not going to accept the Torah now. Right? It would be crazy because they saw firsthand how amazing God was, and they saw that it was the right thing to do to accept the Torah. It was blindly obvious what was going on, right? So it wasn't that God said you're going to die here, but it was like they had no choice because it was so obvious they should have accepted the Torah. That was Pesach. That was beforehand. At the end of the Megillah, we're told Kimu v'kiblu, that the Jewish people re-accepted the Torah during the Purim story, during the Megillah. What does that mean? It means that during the Purim story, at the end of this whole situation, the Jewish people are now re-accepting the Torah out of total love, not out of the fear that they had when they saw all the miraculous miracles and the 10 plagues and the splitting of the sea. They now understand that God is in the everyday life, that God is hidden, and we have to search for him in our lives, not the open miracles, but the hidden miracles that we experience every single day. And that is really what the Purim story and what Esther is all about. Esther was somebody who brought this out of the Jewish people. She was somebody who herself was able to find God hidden in the crevices of a palace that was full of immorality and adultery, adultery, everything. That's where she was living. And she managed to find God in that particular place. And that was how she managed to bring up the Jewish people to re-accept the Torah during Purim, to say, now we understand and now we can see that God exists, not just in the outward miracles, but also in the hidden miracles as well. And that is why, and this is incredible, that is why when Mashiach comes, please God, very soon, we're told that none of the festivals are going to remain. We're not going to have the festivals as we normally have, because they're not going to be relevant anymore. Why do we need to celebrate Pesach, for example? When Mashiach has come, we're going to celebrate Mashiach coming. It's going to be a totally different kind of religion, yes? However, what is going to remain, the one festival, is Purim. Because we will always need to remember that God exists in hidden places. Mashiach will come with bands and, with huge miracles, and it will be like another going out of Egypt. And that's wonderful for us to see. But that's not day-to-day life. That's not how we live in this world all the time. And therefore, Purim will be the only thing that remains from the previous type of Judaism that we are all experiencing now. Because we will still need to remember that even when we can't see God, that God still exists. And I think what is so sad about Esther, and on this we're going to conclude, is that we always finish the Purim story thinking about like all the nice things that the Jewish people did for each other. They're giving them a shlach manah and giving them money and hearing the Megillah, all the stuff that we do on Purim itself. And the story just ends. And we don't think about Esther after the story, right? We don't think about what happens to her. The Jewish people, you can imagine it, were singing and dancing in the street. We're saved. Haman's being killed and we're all being saved. And poor old Esther, she has to live with King Ahasuerus for the rest of her life. She remains the queen living in the palace forever. She can't return to her people. She can't return to living in the house of Mordechai. And really, this is what the sacrifice was that we spoke about at the beginning, that links her to her ancestor, to Rachel, and also to Sarah. Their whole lives were sacrifices. They sacrificed for their people. They sacrificed to make the Jewish people a better people and a nation that wouldn't be destroyed because of the things that they were doing wrong. And I think that what can we really take from Esther? How can we go into Purim with this mindset? Is that Esther was somebody who did not want the spotlight. She was somebody who tried so hard to run away. She hid in her uncle's house because she did not want to live in a palace. She felt inadequate. She felt ill-prepared. She did not want to be involved in what was going on. But Esther shows us through her name and through the fact that she was Hadassah as well as being Esther, she shows us that we can. She shows us that with initiative, when we strategize and we think clearly and we have a plan and we do things just like Esther did, always remembering first by Yom HaShlishi, after 3 days of fasting and praying, and then we get active, and then we do our own hishtadlut, and then we do these things. That is what Esther shows us. Esther teaches us that we can achieve whatever we want to achieve if we have the same mindset that she had as well. And I think, again, this year when we're experiencing a Purim, I mean, it's really crazy. I was looking back at a shir that I gave last year, and at that time we didn't really know what was going on. It was all the beginning of it, and I still can't believe that a year on we're still having the same kind of discussions, that we're not able, some of us are not able to go to shul, and we're not able to do the same things. And I think in this time, Esther is a role model for us even more than ever, is that she was somebody that managed to find God even when the situation was very bleak, even when he was hidden and things didn't look great. And you had to search very, very hard for him. And his face really was hidden during the Purim story. And I think so in some respects, God's face is hiding from us now sometimes, and we can't always see what's going on. We don't understand everything and why this is happening, and why another year has gone past and we still can't be with our family and friends. And I think at this particular moment, this is when we have to turn to people like Esther as our heroines of the story to give us some inspiration to move forward into the festival ahead. And on that note, the last year we also ended on a piece of music, and we don't normally do this. It's like, it happens to be that there's also something else that I found, musical, that I wanted to share with you. There was this someone I follow on Instagram, whatever, called Bracha Jaffe. She's a Jewish singer, female singer, and she did an amazing collaboration I think it was last Purim, and I saw it last year, and I suddenly remembered it when I was preparing for this year. And actually she takes the song from Aladdin, Speechless, which you'll all probably recognize, those of you who've seen Aladdin, the new version of Aladdin. And she takes this song and she basically transforms it into talking about Esther. And if you think about the words in the context of Esther that we've just spoken about, it makes total sense. How she was somebody who was speechless, somebody who didn't have a voice, she was totally inactive, somebody who didn't want to be so much in the spotlight. And then she sort of like opened her wings and she became this amazing queen, this like heroine for us all to look at. So the song is sung by this woman, Bracha Jaffe, but also features this amazing artist called Yaeli Vogel, again in America, who paints these images of Queen Esther. So I wanted to end with that because I think it's a really good sort of portrayal of everything that we spoke about tonight. So hopefully it's going to work. Let me just check. Here we go. Can everyone hear that? Yeah, I'm going to make the screen bigger. Can you hear? Okay. Thumbs up if you can hear. Oh, you can't hear? Maybe it's. I'm going to try now. Let's try with this. Okay. Here comes a wave meant to wash me away, a tide that is taking me under, swallowing sand left with nothing to say, my voice drowned out in the thunder. But I won't cry, and I won't start to crumble. Whenever they try to shut me or cut me down, I won't be silenced. You can't keep me quiet. Won't tremble when you try it. All I know is I won't go speechless. 'Cause I'll breathe Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. There we go. Thank you all for joining. And oh, Caroline, I couldn't see your face in the screen, so I know I was referring to Tanya, just referring to Caroline as well, who was at the share last night. So to both of you. So thank you for joining, and if you have any questions, please let me know. And nice to see you all.